Hey guys, a lot of you have spoken to me about some concerns or questions that you have about still trying to understand stems and how they function and what their purpose is within the context of language. So, I've put together a presentation here that I hope will help us get a better understanding of how stems work. So, today we're going to start talking about the different parts of words and how they function. So, let's take a look at this example first. How many parts or symbols do we need to read in this math problem in order to understand or to solve this equation? Take a quick minute, think about it, choose your answer, and then move on to the next slide. So let's break the equation down. You have 2 plus 3 equals 5. When you stop and think about what the numbers and symbols are actually telling us, there are at the very least four different symbols and meanings. First, you have a couple of whole numbers. That's the 2 and the 3. We have the symbol for addition, which tells us that we need to add the two things on either side of it. We have the equal sign, which tells us that when we follow the process of adding the two whole numbers, we will then get the product of those numbers, which is on the right side of the equation. And then the fact that this 5 is here and on this side of the equation tells us that it's a product of these numbers. So the placement of this number after the equal sign is also something that we have to understand. So the big question you may be having is, this is ELA class. What in the world does an equation have to do with words? And just like equations, words are made up of many, many different parts. These can include prefixes, roots, and or suffixes. A word may have more than one prefix or suffix, and most complex words in the English language actually do have more than one. What happens is we take all of these parts and put them together. And when we do that, we can determine or infer the meaning of the word. So let's look at this word, for example, equation. You know what this means, right? You see this with Miss Platt or Miss Pascal or Mr. Polita, and you know that an equation means that you have to look at some numbers, perform different mathematical functions in order to solve the problem, right? How many parts are there to this word? I want you to take a minute, look at this word, choose your answer, and when you're ready, move on to the next slide. So if you slow down a minute and break this word down, there are at least two different parts. You have the equa and the shun here on the end. So this stem here, equa, or the equa here, is related to the stem equi. This is a suffix that means shun. The stem equi means equal, and the suffix shun means the state, condition, action, process, or result of something. So it could be a state of being, it could be a specific action, could be a specific result. But when you combine these two together, you have equi and shun, and you have a word that means the state of being equal. So when you're completing an equation, you have those two sides to the equation, right? You have the tasks that you're supposed to perform, and then you have the equal sign, and then you have whatever the product is. And so an equation actually represents the state of being equal because you have to have each side of the equation match the other. So when you try to find a word's meaning, you need to find the stems that are familiar to you, recall their meanings, use your knowledge of the root's basic definition to infer or make an educated guess about its meaning. This is the process that you can use anytime you see an unfamiliar word. Sometimes you might figure out the meaning. Sometimes you might need to look at context clues. But when you're looking at word stems, you can generally follow this pattern. So let's go back to this word for a minute. One thing I want you to notice is that when you look at the word equation, you don't see the full stem equi here at the beginning. You just see the EQU, right? You don't see that full stem. When prefixes, roots, and suffixes are combined, they sometimes change forms. And this is to make sure that they create a form or word that conforms to all the rules of the English language and that makes sense when it's used in the context of a sentence. So, what's really important for you guys to take away here is that even though you may not see the full stem here, you do still see some of the parts, and that can help you infer the definition or meaning of a word. For example, even though we have an A here instead of an I, you see a commonality here. And generally speaking, when you see this grouping of letters, whatever word that is has something to do with equality or equity or being equal. So remember that you may not always see exactly the same word form, but look for those patterns of familiarity and draw from that knowledge. Okay, so now we're going to look at a few examples. Take a look at this word. This word is pronounced patricide. What can you infer is the meaning of this word? Choose your option, and when you're ready, move on to the next slide for the lesson. So, this word means to kill one's father or to kill a father. When you break this down into the stems and word parts, you have the stem patri, which comes from the stem pater, which means father. And here you have the stem side, which you may remember from one of our previous lists, where the meaning is death or to kill. So this means to kill one's father or to kill a father. All right, let's look at this word, expire. What can you infer is the meaning of this word? Take a minute, think about it, choose your option, and then when you're ready, move on to the next slide. So this word actually means to breathe a last breath or to breathe a final breath. So the stem X means outside of. So whatever's happening is coming outside of that person. And the stem spear means breath. So when you put X outside of and you put that stem spear, you have breath outside of someone and breath leaving the body. And again, you can see that you don't have the full stem, you just have something that's sort of related to it. So, this is when you use those patterns of words and you look for what you do know. And then, if you're still not sure, you look at this in the context of a sentence. How does your knowledge of the word stems help you understand things? For example, maybe you don't remember this stem or you don't see a pattern between these two words, but you do remember that X means outside of. And so you can remember that X means outside of and look at the word in the context of a sentence and use that to infer or deduce the meaning. All right, this is a trickier one. So this word is incognito. What can you infer is the meaning of this word? Take a minute, think about it, choose your answer, and when you're ready, move on to the next slide. This word actually has three separate parts. First, you have two stems. You have the stem in or in, which means not or without. You have the stem cogn, which means to know or understand or knowledge. And then you have a word form, the ito or the ito. And so they all do different things. And the bottom line is the word means to conceal your identity. Now, there's not a lot in this word when you think about the stems that helps you think about this idea of concealing your identity, right? But we do know that the stem in means not or without. The stem means cog means to know or understand or knowledge. So you say no knowledge, you would have no knowledge of someone's identity. So you would move about with no one knowing your identity. This part of the word is an example of what happens when a stem changes form and combines with other parts to make sure that the different word parts fit together to form the correct tense or word form. This refers to a state of being or action or a condition. And so this means that you are in the state of someone not knowing, in this case, your identity. All right, hyperventilate. What can you infer is the meaning of this word? Take a minute, think about it, choose your answer, and when you're ready, move on to the next slide. So just like incognito, this word has multiple parts. First, we have the stem hyper, which means over or above. Then we have the stem vent, which means come or to come to a place or to come out. And then we have the stem ate. The meaning there is causing to be modified or affected by. So basically, adding this to the end of the word or word groups tells the reader that whatever this stuff is a state of being. So in this case, the word means to breathe more rapidly than normal, or your breath comes to an opening in your body or in general too quickly, and the hyperactivity affects the speed of venting. So over or above the normal speed of expelling something or coming from a body or outside of something, and this is a state of being. So to hyperventilate is to be in a state where your breath is coming too quickly or more quickly than it should. Okay, I know that this is a fairly quick lesson, but I did want to give you guys some background and understanding. And now I need a little bit of information from you. So now that you have a better understanding of how stems work and function, how are you feeling about this topic? Green means, oh my gosh, this makes so much more sense than it did before. I feel so much better. Red is like, I'm still really lost, Miss Krosky. Maybe we need to do some tutoring so we can work one-on-one. This means like, you're like, I kind of get it, but I'm still not really sure. I might need some tutoring or extra practice. This one's like, okay, this makes more sense, but I think I need some more practice. So take a minute, let me know how you're feeling, and I can use that to decide how to move forward with our next steps. As always, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask. Thanks, guys.